The aircraft malfunctioned, but there was one defective parachute available in the cabin. In that dire instant, Mira handed me the final parachute. I succeeded in landing without harm, but my half-sibling Liam, born from my father's infidelity, lost his life in the accident. Following our rescue, Mira chose to uphold our commitment, and we celebrated with an elaborate wedding. Yet, 6 years into our marriage, Mira still held on to bitterness, convinced that I was responsible for Liam's demise. She perceived me as her adversary, leading me to endure a bleak and anguished existence for half a decade. Ultimately, during our divorce proceedings, she decided to end both our lives at the very location where Liam had died. However, upon regaining consciousness, I found myself back on the day of the crash. This time, I resolved to offer the survival chance to the person she cherished most. As I became aware of my rebirth, the airplane had already started to tremble. The flight attendants were distributing parachutes when they discovered that one was defective. After a brief pause, Mira still gave me the last parachute. "This parachute is yours, Leo," she said. Observing the sorrow in Mira's eyes as she handed me the parachute, I stepped back and declined. "No need, Mira. Save Liam first." I refused to take another life this time. I wanted to live for myself. Hearing my words, Mira immediately exhaled in relief. She gazed deeply into my eyes, her expression softening, even showing a hint of joy. Quickly, she grabbed Liam and placed the final parachute on his back. "Leo, you're my fiancé. I was supposed to save you first, but since you've asked me to save Liam, I'll honor your request." With that, she swiftly pulled Liam toward the airplane's exit and leaped out, not even looking back, as if fearing I might change my mind. How absurd! Did she think everyone was like her? It was her decision to make. After our rescue, Mira regretted her choice. In my previous life, she gave me the last parachute and remained by my side after I jumped, leaving Liam alone on the plane. Although we immediately contacted the rescue team after landing safely, Liam's body was never found in the vast sky. When Mira first learned of Liam's death, she showed no emotion. Even towards me, she spoke coldly, treating me as an insignificant person. She could handle all of Liam's affairs alone while I mourned. Her only request was not to leave him buried alone, suggesting he be interred in the family cemetery where a plot was available. I agreed without hesitation. She even asked if I wanted to postpone the wedding. But what did she say? She took my hand, and with deep affection in her eyes declared, "Marrying you has been my lifelong dream. We can't delay our wedding for someone insignificant, can we?" I've waited for this day for so long. I thought she truly loved me and wanted to be with me forever, but later realized she was merely marrying me quickly to punish me for Liam's death. However, that choice wasn't forced upon her, nor was it something I made her choose. So, what did Liam's death have to do with me? This time, I offered the survival chance to the one she loved most. She should be thankful to me. Watching their determined figures vanish as they jumped, I immediately began devising a plan to save myself. After all, this time, I couldn't be sure that Mira would remember to call for help once she was safe. In both lifetimes, Mira's heart had always belonged to my half-brother Liam. In my previous life, although there was little hope, she still contacted the rescue team as soon as we reached an area with a signal. But this time, it was Liam who received the parachute symbolizing survival. Thus, I couldn't even expect her to notify the rescue team immediately after jumping. If she didn't declare me dead right away, I would consider myself fortunate. After all, in both lifetimes, the person Mira loved was Liam. In my former life, I only discovered after our marriage that Mira and Liam had known each other long before. They attended the same school, both recognized as illegitimate children of their respective families. Because of this, they had a mutual understanding and promised to always be together. Our engagement was also influenced by my status as the legitimate heir of the Sue family, the rightful successor to all the Sue family's wealth. So, despite her love for Liam in both lifetimes, she chose to save me for the sake of the Sue family's fortune. In my previous life, Mira deeply regretted choosing to save me for the Sue family's wealth. Now, having made a new decision for her, she should appreciate my choice. As I watched their figures fade, I rushed to the cockpit. Guided by Mira in my last life, I had gradually felt responsible for the plane crash. I believed Liam's death was my fault, that I had taken his chance at survival. Consequently, I deliberately learned how to fly, even obtaining a license, and reviewed countless crash simulations. I consulted numerous experts, but every time I presented the simulation to the instructors, their responses astonished me. There were countless nights when I wished to return to that day. Now my wish had been granted, and I felt an overwhelming sense of anticipation. Drawing from my previous experience, I fastened my seatbelt and began to cautiously control the plane's descent. After all, the plane's predicament was entirely due to the project in Metro City, where both the Sue and Bai families were the most probable contenders. In reality, the plane hadn't malfunctioned. It was merely that the crew had been hired by the opposing side who had fabricated the entire incident. They had deliberately damaged one parachute to destabilize both families, aiming to secure the project in Metro City. But since I had returned, I wouldn't allow the past tragedy to recur. I sat in the cockpit, skillfully adjusting the throttle, control sticks, and pedals. The engine roared back to life, and the rapidly descending plane gradually halted its plunge, even tilting slightly upward. With my careful adjustments, the plane's descent began to stabilize. However, after the rapid descent, the plane was now too low to reach the airport and could only make an emergency landing. Fortunately, below was not a city filled with skyscrapers, but vast mountains. I meticulously controlled the plane's descent, watching as it passed over mountain trees, gently coming to rest in a valley between two peaks. Stepping out of the cockpit and standing on solid ground, I felt rejuvenated. However, the landing site was desolate, showing no signs of human activity, and there was no signal, absolutely no signal. After several failed attempts to dial the emergency number, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I gathered the remaining supplies from the plane and began walking toward the mountain's base. But the path was perilous. After just a few steps, I sustained several scratches from the wild grass. Seeing the blood on my ankle, I couldn't even wipe it off and had to keep moving. Eventually, not far down the path, I spotted a figure. I quickly called out, "Help! Wait, please, help me!" She heard me and turned around. As she turned, I froze. It was Ava. When Ava saw me, her brows furrowed again, and she immediately approached. Noticing the injuries on my body, there was a flicker of concern in her eyes, though she quickly concealed it. "What happened? How did you end up here alone?" I explained the situation as clearly as I could. After hearing my story, she sighed deeply. Surviving a great disaster often brings future blessings. Let me tend to those wounds. I had expected her to lead the way, but instead, she gently supported me and guided me toward the car at the mountain's base. My hand instinctively reached around her neck and rested on her shoulder, and the faint scent of roses from her body enveloped my senses. Feeling slightly embarrassed, I spoke up. "Ava, maybe you should lead the way. I can walk on my own." But Ava only held me tighter. "It's fine. The mountain path is difficult to navigate." Seeing her insist, I didn't argue and allowed her to guide me to the car, where she helped me into the passenger seat. She retrieved a small first aid kit from under the seat, took out some disinfectant alcohol, and gently began cleaning my wounds. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "No, it doesn't." Looking at her concerned expression, I gripped my arm with my right hand, striving to prevent tears from welling up in my eyes. I recalled the previous life when Mira and I had just married. At a company event, a group of people kept offering toasts, and I worried Mira might drink excessively. So I urged her to slow down. Suddenly, she became furious and, in front of everyone, shoved me into the champagne tower when I wasn't paying attention. The champagne glasses tumbled down, shattering on the floor, with glass pieces embedding themselves into my skin. Blood mixed with spilled wine covered my body. I cried out in pain and, with the help of the staff, managed to stand up, looking at her in disbelief. But her eyes showed no warmth, and her voice was cold. "Does it hurt? It should. When Liam died, his body was beyond recognition. He suffered 1,000 times more, 1,000,000 times more. If it weren't for you, if you hadn't taken his parachute, he wouldn't have died, Leo Sue. It's all your fault." I stood there, enduring her accusations, allowing her to trample me into the dust. It was then that I realized Mira and Liam had long been deeply in love, and marrying me was merely for her family's wealth. Ha 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 ha, I laughed loudly at her, as if she were a joke. Mira, do you really think I caused all of this? The plane was sabotaged by your rivals who deliberately damaged one parachute. You didn't blame them, yet you come here blaming me. You're insane. After saying that, I turned and left, heading alone to the hospital to treat my wounds. That was when my relationship with Mira hit rock bottom. She began belittling me in every public setting. But now the sister who had grown up with me was careful not to hurt me. Her hands were gentle as she tended to my wounds. I took a deep breath, trying to make my voice sound normal. Thank you, Ava. Suddenly, Ava looked up, grabbed my wrist, and stared at me seriously. Leo, you and Mira may not be right for each other, but our marriage can still continue. I stared at her in disbelief. Sister Ava, what do you mean? But she suddenly withdrew her hand, placing a painkiller in my palm and not continuing the conversation. It's nothing. I'll take you home. Okay, I responded honestly. I didn't want to return home. My parents had an arranged marriage, a union of two powerful families that produced me. But after my birth, each found their true love elsewhere. As their child from a past marriage, they both agreed to leave the family wealth to me, but showed no interest in caring for me emotionally. As for Mira, after we married in the previous life, she never took me anywhere public as her husband. She never allowed me to touch her, and when people inquired about me, she would sneer and belittle me. Even after the company merger, she and those around me manipulated me, eroding my shares. Because I loved her, I kept retreating, and in the end, I had no way out. So, looking at Ava, who was focused on tending to my wounds, I bluntly asked, I don't want to go back, Ava. Can I stay with you for a few days? Seeing her silence, I gave her a pleading look, trying to appear as pitiful and hurt as possible. In the last life, she had gone abroad shortly afterward, so we didn't have much interaction. But when she learned I was getting a divorce, she returned to help me without hesitation. So, whether in this life or the last, she had always been someone who supported me. When she saw my pitiful expression, she suddenly lowered her head, her eyes burning as she looked at me. Are you sure? Living with me will come at a cost. The sudden closeness made me instinctively take a step back, but I could still smell her unique rose fragrance, which made me feel a bit dizzy. I'll pay whatever cost, really, really. I looked at her with firm determination, and she suddenly smiled. For a moment, the atmosphere became ambiguous, and I thought we might kiss. But then she stepped back, ruffling my messy hair. Remember what you said? Okay, but in the end, I still returned home. The car drove me along the way, but as we passed a gas station, Ava, who was holding my hand and about to buy some food, ran into Mira and her rescue team. Leo, it's really you. Are you okay? When Mira saw me, her eyes flashed with disbelief, followed by joy, but I only gave her a cold glance, keeping my hand firmly in Ava's. What could have happened to me? Mira stared at me in shock, seemingly not expecting me to survive the fall from such a great height. Liam, standing behind Mira, noticed Ava behind me. Without hesitation, he stepped in front of Mira and spoke. Leo, was it Ava who saved you? But how did you survive that fall from 10,000 meters? And by some strange twist of fate, end up meeting Ava? Do you two already have some connection? What was he trying to imply? Did he think I orchestrated all of this? And you know Ava has been in competition with Mira for the family fortune lately. What a coincidence that you two emerge from the forest together. Leo, are you really going to claim that none of this is related to you? I took a deep breath and looked back at Liam. In my previous life, although Liam's body was never recovered, I had felt immense guilt. Besides, even though he was only a few months younger than me, I had always treated him like a younger brother. But now, it seemed like this brother didn't see me as his true sibling. Seeing that Liam was about to continue pressing the issue, I couldn't take it anymore. I strode over to him and, under his accusing gaze, threw a punch straight to his face. Liam immediately covered his face, staring at me in disbelief, and even Mira beside him looked at me in shock. I casually blew at the non-existent dust on my hand. The world suddenly felt so quiet. It was blissful. Then, with everyone still stunned, I raised my hand and turned to the police officer who had just arrived. "Officer, I'd like to report slander. He's spreading rumors about me." And so we were all taken to the police station. Liam called the police, claiming that Ava and I had conspired to cause the accident, while I, in turn, accused Liam of defaming us. After some back and forth, we were all held while waiting for the police interrogation. Liam kept glaring at me, seemingly trying to get me to confess something incriminating. "Leo, we're half-brothers. Mira is your fiancée. Are you really that heartless, wanting us both dead?" I lowered my head, glancing at the bandages on my foot and ignoring him. After a moment, I spoke coldly. "Do you have any evidence for all these claims? You should know better than anyone the consequences of slander." I lifted my head and looked at him with icy eyes. "Liam, have you forgotten what happened to the last person who slandered me? When I was in high school, someone jealous of my top grade spread rumors that I had cheated on my exams. The rumors spread like wildfire. When my parents found out, they called the police, who arrested all the culprits. Some of them even tried to deny their involvement, claiming they had been coerced. But as the police dug deeper, they all eventually admitted their actions." Liam's face immediately changed when he heard this. He stood there, silent, unwilling to speak further. But Mira, who had been listening to our exchange, was furious. She quickly pulled Liam behind her, glaring at me with disdain. "Leo, what do you mean by that? The people who spread those rumors about you were already caught. Don't threaten Liam with such things. He was just voicing his thoughts. Is it really necessary for you to act like this?" I gave her a cold look, with no emotion in my eyes. "Since you're so sure, does that mean you were the one who orchestrated my downfall back then?" Mira's face instantly turned pale, but years of experience in business kept her calm. She narrowed her eyes at me and replied with a cold sneer, "Leo, speak with evidence." I couldn't help but laugh. "Now you want to talk about evidence?" You, Mira, enraged by my words, turned pale with anger. Her voice sharpened as she tried to respond. But before she could say anything more, Ava walked out of the interrogation room. Seeing the scene, Ava immediately stepped in front of me, radiating an undeniable sense of authority. "Do you still want to make a move?" I stood behind Ava, smirking as I watched Mira, who seemed to be utterly flustered, eyeing Ava with a mix of fury and confusion. "Ava, I'm his fiancée. Is that so?" Ava deliberately turned to me, her icy gaze suddenly softening into a look filled with tenderness, her eyes seeming to glisten with warmth. "She's your fiancée." I quickly shook my head and answered without hesitation. "No, of course not." Ava chuckled lightly, her voice carrying a subtle allure. She exuded a carefree, relaxed charm, especially with the way her eyes seemed to sparkle. Her gaze made everything else disappear, and I found myself unable to think about anything except those soft, inviting lips. She must be enchanting me. Otherwise, why would I feel compelled to lean in and kiss her? Mira, witnessing this, felt the blood rush to her head. Her face darkened several shades, and she glared at us with obvious malice. Just as she was about to erupt, the police called me into the room to take my statement. Mira had no choice but to relent. By the time we had all been interrogated, the police had a better idea of who the primary suspects were. By the time we left the police station, it was already evening. I was holding Ava's hand, slowly walking out through the main entrance. Just as I was about to get into Ava's car, Mira suddenly spoke up from the side. "Leo, your parents already know what happened today. They're really worried about you and are waiting for you at your villa. Shouldn't you go check on them?" I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. They were so worried about me that they didn't even bother to call and ask how I was doing. Instead, they just stayed at home waiting for me. What a way to show concern. Moreover, they had both already found their true loves. If it weren't for the prearranged deal to leave their assets to me, they probably wouldn't even consider giving me their wealth. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly when I thought back to my childhood. When I was little, I didn't understand why they got divorced or why they didn't want to see me. In an effort to please them, I tried so hard to excel just to make them smile a little when they signed my report cards. I wanted even the smallest shred of love from them, but even that was nowhere near what they gave their new children. Eventually, I stopped hoping and started celebrating my own successes, whether it was getting the top score or buying myself a little cake on my birthday to mark the occasion. It was during this phase of my life that I met Ava in college. Our families had been longtime friends, and the marriage contract had been set up a long time ago, though the right partner had never been chosen. After my father divorced my mother, he immediately married Liam's mother, only to later claim he had found his true love on the other side. After having Ava, my father had a child with another woman and named her Mira. Though Mira was an illegitimate child, she was still brought back to the family estate and raised there. The marriage contract was supposed to be fulfilled between Ava and me. But when I went to university, Mira began to aggressively pursue me. Having never experienced love before, I completely fell for her after days of intense pursuit. I believed she liked me. No, she loved me. That's why I agreed to go through with the engagement ceremony with her, despite all the opposition from others. They thought that after I married her, she would take charge of everything, leaving me to focus on managing the family business. To them, that was their version of love for me. So when I eventually asked for a divorce in my past life, they naturally refused. To them, my happiness didn't matter. What mattered was that the company was well managed. I also knew that after our marriage, it wouldn't be easy for the two families to divorce. So I endured for year after year, until in the 6th year of our marriage, I finally obtained proof of Mira's mismanagement. I presented the evidence to her, threatening to file for divorce unless she agreed. But in this new life, I was determined not to make the same mistakes again. I got into the car, glanced at Ava in the passenger seat, and whispered, "Ava, can I drive you home?" Ava didn't refuse. I started the car, and as we neared her house, she handed me her phone. I looked at her, confused. She spoke, her voice carrying a subtle coldness. "Tomorrow, I'll pick you up, and we'll go to the Bai family to discuss the marriage contract." I quickly entered my phone number, handed the phone back to her respectfully. "It's done, Ava." Ava parked the car neatly, then dialed my number. She waited for the sound of my phone ringing before opening the car door. "Go on, if you need anything, call me." "Okay, I will." After leaving the Bai family estate, I drove back home. As soon as I opened the front door, I saw my parents sitting on opposite ends of the couch, each of them silent, but the tension in the air was palpable. Before I could even take a step towards the sofa, my father immediately stood up and started berating me. "You're already this old. How can you still act like this? Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed today to wait for you? I turned down a multi-million-dollar business dinner just to be here. And you? Since when can you fly a plane? How come I didn't know about that?" In his fury, my father slammed his hand on the table, pointing at me, his voice rising in anger. "Liam was only asking you a few questions at the police station, and you threatened him like that. Where's your sense of being an older brother? And what's going on with you and Ava?" Before my father could finish, my mother picked up a vase from the table and threw it at him. "Diego, what do you mean by that? How dare you criticize Leo over an illegitimate child?" Stunned by the broken vase on the floor, Diego quickly shifted his attention to my mother. "Did I go against the agreement? Even with Liam, I still left most of the inheritance to Leo. But you," my mother was utterly furious now, pointing at Diego. "Don't think I don't know. Your illegitimate child and Mira have been secretly colluding all this time. I see through both of your schemes." "Mom, I was shocked. She knew. She knew everything. So why was she still insisting I marry Mira? Why did she reject my divorce in the past life even though she knew all along?" My mother, slightly flustered, spoke. "Who you marry doesn't matter. At least Mira has the ability to help you manage the company. If you find someone better, I'll support you in calling off the engagement." I bitterly smiled. So this was it. None of them truly loved me. I stood up and declared, "I'm breaking off my engagement with the Bai family." "No." Before I could even finish, my father immediately rejected my proposal. "That marriage was arranged when you were just a child. You can't cancel it over something as trivial as this." "I don't agree." "You don't disagree." My mother shot back. "You just want Leo to marry Mira, take our assets, and let your illegitimate son take over." My mother was utterly furious now, pointing at Diego. "Don't think I don't know. Your illegitimate child and Mira have been secretly colluding all this time. I see through both of your schemes. Mom, I was shocked. She knew. She knew everything. So why was she still insisting I marry Mira? Why did she reject my divorce in the past life even though she knew all along? My mother, slightly flustered, spoke. Who you marry doesn't matter. At least Mira has the ability to help you manage the company. If you find someone better, I'll support you in calling off the engagement. I bitterly smiled. So this was it. None of them truly loved me. I stood up and declared, I won't cancel my engagement with the Bai family. I'm going to marry Ava. Diego seemed about to argue, but stopped when he saw my mother's expression. He reluctantly fell silent. The next day, I woke up to see my mother's car parked outside. As soon as I came down, she motioned for me to get in. Let's go. I'm taking you to the Bai family. The drive was quiet. By the time we arrived at the Bai family estate, Liam had already gotten there before us. Seeing my mother and me enter, Liam proudly wrapped his arm around Mira's waist. Looking at my mother with smug satisfaction, my mother merely glanced at him with disdain and then immediately got to the point. We've come here to discuss the marriage contract. Grandma Bai liked me, but because Mira's mother was now in charge, Grandma's voice had little weight in the household. Especially when Mira heard what we had come for, she immediately grabbed my hand. You want to break off the engagement with the Bai family? I pulled my hand back, and before I could respond, Ava appeared from upstairs, walking over to me and taking my hand. We're not breaking off the engagement with the Bai family. We're breaking it off with you. He's my fiancé now. Mira glared at our joined hands, her voice shrill with anger. Why? I smiled coldly and met her gaze. Why? Don't you know? Your beloved Liam is perfectly fine and standing right beside you. Shouldn't you be happy? Mira's eyes faltered for a moment before shock overtook her expression. She knew I knew, and I knew she knew. But this was our secret. Something we both understood but would never say aloud. Seeing the tension, Grandma Bai sighed in resignation. Leo, we owe you an apology. Don't worry, when you marry Ava, all the shares under my name will be transferred to both of you. I smiled and turned to Grandma Bai. Thank you, Grandma. I'll have it officially announced by 10 a.m. today. With that, I left the Bai family estate with Ava. I didn't expect Mira to chase after us. Leo, I can explain the reason I did what I did back then. I simply turned and got into Ava's car, rolling down the window and mockingly glancing at Mira. You regretted it back then, so now you should cherish him even more. As soon as my words left my mouth, the car window slowly rolled back up. Ava squeezed my hand and spoke firmly. There's no need to say more to her. She doesn't deserve it. Yeah, you're right. I tightly gripped her hand in mine. We spent the entire day in a villa on the outskirts of the city, enjoying our time together. By the next morning, I packed up and got ready for work. In my previous life, even though I had landed safely, I was still shaken, which caused me to miss out on the Metro City project. Mira, on the other hand, had no competition and smoothly secured the Metro City project. Watching the project double her assets, it was clear to me just how valuable it was. I wasn't about to let that slip by again. While I was working nonstop, Liam came by the office to find me. Leo, this project is really important to Mira. Could you not? No. I firmly rejected him, as I had in my previous life. I wasn't stupid enough to believe that they had pure intentions. If I hadn't threatened Mira with evidence of her mismanagement and forced her into divorce, she would have tormented me for even longer. But just as we were about to proceed with the divorce, she suddenly changed her mind, stabbing me with a knife and setting fire to the villa. She claimed it was all because of the debt we owed Liam. But in the end, she was the one making the decisions, not me. I didn't want to waste any more time with him and ordered for him to be kicked out of my office. While I was fully focused on securing the project, Mira didn't give up. She called me non-stop. As I kept blocking her numbers and finally warned her I would report her to the police if she continued harassing me, she finally fell silent for a while. 2 months later, after my persistent efforts, I successfully secured the Metro City project. To celebrate, Ava and I had an impromptu night of passion that lasted until morning. The next day, I walked into the office, full of excitement to take the company to new heights. But when I arrived, I saw Mira standing outside my office, holding a bouquet of flowers. Leo, I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me. I didn't want to deal with her, so I responded sarcastically, if you're sick, go see a doctor. Don't come bother me. As I turned to walk away, Mira stood up and tried to grab me, but in the process, she accidentally yanked my tie off, revealing the red marks on my neck. Leo, I snatched the tie from her hand. Mira wouldn't let up, her eyes filled with desperation. Leo, I really regret it. I know I was wrong. If you forgive me, I'll do anything you want. I sneered, lowering my head to look at her, speaking in a tone only the two of us could hear. What do you regret? Regretting how you treated me in the last life. Don't you know late remorse is worth less than dirt? Her face drained of color, her whole body turning pale as she looked at me in shock. I was about to walk past her and head to my office, but she suddenly dashed ahead of me, rushing toward the window. Half her body was leaning out of it, and she screamed, Leo, if you won't forgive me, I'll jump right now. I looked at her in disbelief. Before I could respond, Ava appeared behind me, pulling me toward her and wrapping herself around me. It's fine. If you jump now, your mother will be thrown out of the house tomorrow. You. Mira stared at Ava in disbelief, clearly not expecting this kind of blunt threat from someone who had always been so gentle. Fuming, Mira climbed back inside and gave me one last longing look as she left the building. I didn't care. My marriage to Ava was progressing quickly, and there were so many things to plan for. When I heard about Mira again from a friend, it felt like a lifetime ago. My friend told me that Mira had been forced to leave the country by Ava. I shook my head. With everything going on at the company during the day and spending time with Ava in the evenings, I had no energy to worry about anything else. It was through my friend that I found out my father had found yet another true love. This new love even gave him a son. And as always, Diego quickly abandoned Liam and his mother, marrying this new woman. Watching himself get cast aside, Liam snapped. He took all the money from Mira's company and fled the country with his mother. Mira had no choice but to strike a deal with Ava. If Ava helped her and her mother escape abroad, Ava would give her a sum of money for their peaceful retirement. Naturally, Mira agreed and left for another country. But what I didn't expect was that on the day Ava and I were getting married, I received the news that Mira had been arrested. She had truly been destined to be with Liam. Otherwise, they wouldn't have run into each other on a foreign street. It was an encounter filled with hatred. The street was notorious for being lawless, and Mira shot Liam in broad daylight before being arrested by the police. But all of this had nothing to do with me anymore. Now, sitting on the couch with Ava's clothes in my arms, I playfully whined, Ava, those new clothes I bought for you are so cute. Could you try them on for me? Ava shot me a glance. Her face flushed in embarrassment. Do you really consider these to be proper clothes with so little fabric? Of course they are.